petition to save PS 109.
What's your name?
My name is Gwen Goodwin, and for the last 4 years, I've been fighting the mayor's office to allow us to have PS 109 in East Harlem turned back into a public school. In 1999, we stopped the illegal demolition of PS 109, and then we went on to landmark it, and we got a promise from the city that they would turn it back into public school. What's happened when Mayor Bloomberg came into office was that all stopped. Mayor Bloomberg wants to turn it into high-end housing with art space on one side, and on the other side would be regular market rate housing. I've been fighting Melissa Mark Viverito and Mayor Bloomberg for 4 years on this because we think that it's more important to have PS 109 be a public school. It still is in the public school system. The Department of Education still owns the building, and we've been lobbying to that point ever since. And we keep running into walls. We keep being told by the mayor's office there is no overcrowding in East Harlem. That's simply not true. We've done the studies. The schools are 83% overcrowded, and now we have kindergartens doubling up. We have kindergarten children all over the city doubling up.
That's
and we
horrible.
sit with an empty schoolhouse that could house 1,200 children, and it would be a fraction of the cost to building a new school. The restoration of PS 109, even though the city tried to illegally demolish it, would be $40 million. To build a new school, you're looking at $150 million to $350 million. So it's fiscally sound to restore the public school of PS 109 and use it that way, and it's also good for the children of East Harlem.
Again, I just want to really thank you because, again, the mayor he has this powerful public relations machine that is spewing out all this information to the press that isn't true. So for me to stand here in City Hall and be able to get this interview with you and put this on the World Wide Web is so powerful. Thank you.
Can I make a comment about
sure,
the mayor?
Please.
I just want to make it really clear to people who don't know this that the mayor has all of the power right now of a dictator. Because
Correct.
the city council yields to him and no one else. They do not yield to their constituents any longer. They yield to the mayor.
It's undemocratic.
It's completely undemocratic, and people that are serving him now are simply not serving us. So it's very, very important that we get rid of this system where millionaires or billionaires can come in and literally just take over simply by buying people off. Correct. And make sure, of course, we get honest people in there. But right now, I think the city council has betrayed people all over the city.
Correct.
Tony Avella, I will say this, has been a great guy. He has voted against the mayor so many times. And for places like East Harlem and Harlem, this was really important to us that he voted against that zone change at 125th Street, which is what I've been working on for the last year. Because the zone change at 125th Street means the displacement of thousands of people and residents and businesses all along the corridor of 125th. It starts at 2nd Avenue and it crosses over all the way to the Columbia University giveaway, where we're using eminent domain over there to take 18.25 acres, and we're also using it on the east side on 2nd Avenue. So it's very, very important that we have very courageous men and women serving this city that are not here to get rich. This is not a job where you make money. You want to make money, you got to go down on Wall Street,
right,
and let the taxpayers bail you out. But here, this is a public servant. So you're really just a waitress to the public.
Exactly. The bottom line is he did the same thing with us in the East Village, Lower East Side. NYU and Cooper Union did not need to use eminent domain to completely displace people. Bloomberg pushed a tsunami of community question development throughout the city, which was major displacement of so many people and small businesses, and he took away democracy as well. So we need to fight to get it back. That's why I'm here today, to support Tony Avella.
Oh, hi. I don't see a light on, but I see my face over there, so I'll assume that I'm on and that I'm on camera 3. This is 30 frames a second, as many of you know who are watching, both those who like me and those who can't stand me. My guest today is in transit. She's running for city council in what we used to refer to as Spanish Harlem, but now the districts are so broken up that it's like the Wizard of Oz. Well, they took Brooklyn and they threw it over there, and then they took the Bronx and they threw it over there. She's on her way. She's running a little late. We're only 1 week away from the from the primary in New York City, which is September the 10th. Today as we speak, right now it is September the 3rd. And she should be here shortly. Her name is Gwen Goodwin, and there's a whole ton of questions I want to ask her. She made a few statements on the opening clip that we saw, And when we get here, we'll ask her a few more questions. There's a lot of things I want to know about housing and education and the city of New York, and specifically the city council, because the city council is a seat that not only the city council person has to reflect the needs of their district, but they act in tandem, unlike the mayor, who is a law unto himself most times. The city council has to act in tandem with the other city council members to enact action that actually affects the whole city. So when she gets here, and I'm waiting, she's a block away, and I hope I didn't steer in the wrong direction. I was running. But we're going to go to my opening, and we might show another clip of Gwen before she gets here to sit her down. We might just push her in front of the camera and sit her down in the chair and let her huff and puff and blow while she's running. But if you guys back there have my opening ready, we're going to run that opening. Then they'll come back to me, and we might have to get another clip ready. But this is 30 frames a second. Into the fact where the victim is now the perpetrator and the perpetrator is now the victim. And that just drives me crazy. And she is here, and we have been waiting with bated breath, whatever
good.
the hell that means.
I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. That's all right. We know that the primary is next Tuesday, the 10th. So I expect that you're running around like
crazy. We are
crazy.
running around. We're also organizing a rent strike with NYCHA right now, and that's what's been taking us so long. We've been in the press for the last couple days trying to organize a rent strike to get these repairs made at Lexington House projects.
Okay, since you started off with that, let's start off with that. Before we start, formally introduce yourself to, and the camera back right there, number that says 4 is actually your camera.
Okay,
so,
4. Hi, 4.
Hi, 4.
Okay, so I'm Gwen Goodwin, and I'm running for City Council in East Harlem, District 8, Mott Haven, the South Bronx. I've been a resident of East Harlem for 28 years, and I'm an activist. And this is my second time getting onto the ballot and running, and I'm running against Melissa Mark Viverito, who is the incumbent. Yes, you might say.
Well,
there's a lot of people that are confused about who and what is really progressive in our district, and so I'm glad you're giving me the opportunity today to catch up with a runaway press train, which has given a lot of people the wrong impression of what's really going on in East Harlem. And it's time that people really understood the propaganda that's been put out there by many, many places and why it's been put out there and who's really behind it. So, you know, today hopefully we can unveil some of the truth. We'll do a little truth serum here today.
Now, you were involved in some sort of debate, or I don't know what it was, but there was a bunch of you were there, and there were shouts from the audience. Can you tell me about that?
Well, Melissa basically got the opportunity to set up a debate. She brought both of her groups in. There was Community Voices Heard, which is heavily funded by her. It's also
Melissa being
Melissa Mark Viverito is the city council person. But here is how undemocratically it was set up. The invitation went out on Facebook. If you were not a member of Facebook and you were not connected to East Harlem Preservation, you could not get into the forum that night. Now, this is a very, very important forum for people who live in East Harlem. And the two groups that were most heavily invited were Community Voices Heard and Picture the Homeless. Now, Community Voices Heard and Picture the Homeless are both subsidized by Melissa Mark Viverito, and East Harlem Preservation has long ties with Melissa Mark Viverito. So what we had was a very unbalanced so-called debate that was about to happen that night. As a matter of fact, each one of us that were running for city council were told we could only bring 2 of our guests. Now, when I finally got upstairs, I saw that only half the seats were taken. So basically, it was set up in a way so that people were not allowed to bring anybody else with them. Now, I had to call the head of security through Hendrick College, and he said, Miss Goodwin, you go right ahead, you bring your people in. So although I only had 6 people in my group, my group is very concerned with housing, and they're very concerned with seeing these debates. I wish everyone from East Harlem had been able to participate, because as transparent as Melissa says she is, we are anything but transparent when it comes to Melissa. It's the same thing with her housing that she lives in, which is publicly subsidized, even though she's a millionairess. She owns 2.
Yeah, they shouted that from the crowd.
Of course they did. Yeah. It's finally coming out that in 1997, in September of 1997, Melissa Mark Viverito's father died. He was a shareholder in at least one of the hospitals in Puerto Rico. And she knew she was going to come in to at least $3 million. In December of 1997, she put her application out for a low-income townhouse in East Harlem. Now, the townhouses were originally constructed for low-income families who did not have credit, but they had a history of working, okay? So this is who it was for. And not only does Melissa slip in there once and get a townhouse with 3 stories, but she gets another one. So she has 2 townhouses in East Harlem that are for low-income families. And it's kind of interesting because the way the townhouses are set up, it was a lottery system. So hitting lottery once is interesting. Hitting it twice is just a strike in the night of lightning. Now, I've also been emailed recently a letter from somebody who tells me that her cousin is married to the developer, and he also lives in one of these townhouses. This is really, really troubling because the level of homelessness in East Harlem and is through the roof. And to say to people that are working very hard, that have 2 jobs, that have children, sorry, but we have our council person, who wasn't the council person at the time, who snuck in there, got herself not 1 but 2 of these properties, is very, very upsetting. And not just that, the fact that she rents 5 of the apartments out. She's made them into apartments, and she rents them out for income. She also has 4 condominiums in Puerto Rico. So when Melissa goes out,
that's a good gig.
Well, it is a good gig. It's a millionairess. It's actually a wolf in sheep's clothing. And you know, I remember last year when Melissa came out one day at Occupy Wall Street, where she got arrested.
Yeah, you were involved?
I was there.
Right, okay.
I was at Occupy for the entire year until February.
Wow.
Now, the reason why it was so important for my husband and myself to be there is not just are we fed up to hear, but you know, my husband is a postman. So we're being very, very affected by the things that are happening through Wall Street. Plus, we felt that it was the one place where we were obligated to show up to sound off and what's really going on, to take a stance on what's really going on with the banks, you know, ripping off everybody in sight. So we wanted to be there. What would happen is I would take the morning shift, my husband would take the evening shift. And I remember when Melissa came down, I remember that night going over the Brooklyn Bridge. I also remember my mother calling me on the phone and saying, don't you dare get arrested, because you are not a millionairess like she is, and we are not bailing you out of jail. So although I was there for the whole year and I did the first walk over the Brooklyn Bridge, as a matter of fact, it was my story that got on Channel 7 News to give clarification to what really happened the first walk over the Brooklyn Bridge. What happened over the Brooklyn Bridge the first time was literally we were directed by the police to go like in a U shape down on the lower part of the road where the cars were there. When nobody knew what was going on, we thought, you know, okay, the police are just shepherding us down here. We had no idea that the buses were going to be lining up to arrest people for going down onto the walkway. So it's very significant to tell Jeff Pegueñez that that is what really happened that day, and I'm glad that he knew. And it was kind of interesting too, because the police statement came out before my statement on TV, taking the official stand that, you know, we had gone down and we had, you know, obstructed traffic and were getting in the way. So it was totally a bag of nonsense. It did not happen that way. But
wow. We're gonna get into a lot of what you said specifically, but first, before we do that, I want to establish a couple of parameters. The job of city council person, as I said before, I think I was saying it while you were getting mic'd, entails not just bringing in money for your district, but it also entails working with other city council people. Now, this has nothing to do with you, because there was a different council speaker. But contrary to what the Daily News and the Post believes, there are a lot of people who actually have stated the fact that they believe, as a matter of fact, there is a anybody but Quinn movement out.
Now there's an anybody but Melissa movement out also. I've been getting emails from them.
Yeah, but the point I was going to make was that there are a lot of people who who believe sincerely that Christine Quinn was an extension of Mayor Mike Bloomberg, and they were operating basically for millionaires and developers in New York City, and that a lot of council people worked in, that she controlled a lot of the city council, and that a lot of people who are talking about bringing in affordable housing, yada, 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 were also empowered for 10, 12 years or more. The whole time the rent structure in New York went from a few $100s a month for a little flat to literally thousands of dollars for even less than the little flat that you had, you know.
And even people in NYCHA, by the way, let's not forget them, that they're also paying between $1,200 and $1,500 a month now in this low-income housing, which has basically been allowed to decay into indoor slums.
Right, right. There are people who are paying $3,000, $4,000 for a half of an apartment in a tenement housing. I'm not talking about an elevator.
No, we're talking about my building, which is I walk 92 steps to get to the top of my tenement building. And I am one of the victims of these terrible landlords. And by the way, the landlord that I have is very close friends with Melissa, who did something very bizarre. They actually, she commissioned artists to paint a bird on the side of my building with its head torn off. And what that apparently means in the Puerto Rican culture that I've been told is that the problem's been fixed. This is really scary. It's very, very frightening that from the top of my building, which is 5 stories high, to the bottom, there is the head of a dead bird, and it's inside of like a basket where it's being impaled. Wow. And Melissa was the one who commissioned this fine piece of art. But my landlord let her do it because my landlord bought our building 7 years ago. He immediately evicted as many people as he could, and then he came to me, and I did tell him, you probably shouldn't do this because you're probably not going to win, but he didn't listen to me. So I am what you call a preferential rent stabilized tenant. And my case was one of the 50 notable cases in New York City when I won it. And that is of all the cases. That is how significant it is. Now, I helped a lot of people behind me because guess what? Without this precedent, judges would not have anything to hang their hat on. So we were able to help people inadvertently. But, you know, going through the courts downtown, landlord-tenant court, is a very frightening, upsetting, scary experience. And while I was going through it and I was occupying Wall Street, I begged the people that Occupy Wall Street to understand that the dilemma in Manhattan was not loss of mortgages, but loss of your apartments in the New York City, throughout New York City. Right. And what I tried to explain to them is that we needed to occupy New York City Housing Court. That is where we needed to plunk our butts and our signs and to take a stand there. This is what's really important because ever since Mayor Bloomberg has come in, and under Speaker Quinn, and under Melissa Mark-Viverito, indeed under Melissa Mark-Viverito, thousands and thousands of people have been evicted and cleared out of their homes. Now, this happens for a lot of reasons. And by the way, I do want to tell you that in your question about whether I think the Speaker was participating with the Mayor in the clearing out of New York City, as well as many of the City Council members, of course I do. I was down there protesting when we were thrown out of the City Council by Speaker Quinn for protesting the rezoning of 125th Street. So yes, I absolutely do think. Yeah, the only thing good, by the way, that came out of that was I met my husband and we got married. Oh, nice. So although the zoning went through, and I just want you to realize something. So many people don't understand what that means and the significance. When you rezone the entire corridor of 125th Street, starting at First Avenue, going over to the west side, then giving Columbia University 9 buildings to eminent domain. That's big. Now, guess who led the way? Melissa Mark-Viverito. So for Melissa Mark-Viverito to tell you that she's for affordable housing, I can't believe that she does not know that to rezone an entire corridor like that is not gentrification on steroids. I mean, that's exactly what it was.
It's beyond gentrification in that, because I'm in what is now the East Village. It didn't start off the East Village, but it's certainly, and it is being co-opted, taken over by NYU. NYU is like Columbia on steroids.
Yes,
it's like,
exactly.
It's like Masters of the Universe's rich kids coming in there.
Yes.
And it is beyond gentrification. Gentrification is people who make more money than you coming in and taking apartments and setting up shop or whatever. When you rezone and your primary focus is a major college, what that does is create a rich, transient renter base.
That's right.
That's only there for the semester or two, then moves out, so you continually raise the rent, raise the rent, raise the rent. Right. And it devastates people who are actually living there, trying to raise families or trying to maintain community. There's no way they can do it.
Yes, it certainly does. And I think that one of the things that has made it also extremely hard for people that are renters in New York City was a bill that Melissa Mark Viverito and Christine Quinn wrote, which sounds wonderful. It's called the Tenant Anti-Harassment Bill, and it is anything but. Now, let me make this clear to you. You used to be able to sue your landlord if you were being harassed, and if you won your case, you would get treble damages, and anyone could witness the case. It could be your neighbor, it could be a policeman, a fireman, anybody could witness the harassment. Christine Quinn and Melissa Mark Viverito, I should say Melissa Mark Viverito spearheaded this, so let's get it in the right order with Quinn's support. What they did was they rewrote the bill. So now, the only way you can bring an action into court for harassment is if HPD witnesses you being harassed. If HPD has not witnessed you being harassed, you may not bring a court action in landlord-tenant court against your landlord for harassment. Now, let's say you actually have HPD see it, and you go in, and they say they've seen it, and you win your case. Guess what you get? You get nothing. You get no dollars whatsoever. There's a $5,000 cap on the fine, and the fine goes to the city. So you get to bring the case, you get to hire the lawyer, you get to spend the time, and at the end of the day, the city collects the $5,000 and you get nothing. Now guess how many cases have been won in the last 4.5 years?
I can't even imagine.
Okay, zero.
Wow.
Zero cases. Now, when this was brought up to Metropolitan Council on Housing, when I went to one of their events where they sponsored Melissa Mark Viverito speaking, and they might have even backed her this year and endorsed her. When I told the tenants in the group, they were shocked. They could not believe it. And I find it shocking that people that work for these tenants groups, or the lawyers, would not let their people know about this kind of deceptive behavior. And this is a pattern that Melissa has all through our community. She goes out and she gets on the cameras and she talks about the McDonald's workers. While she's talking about the McDonald's workers, her workers are sending me letters through the internet telling me that there's no heat in her office, she doesn't pay overtime, that they have to come to work in hat and gloves, and she's a tyrant. Really? So who are you for? I mean, it seems to me Melissa's for everything that's popular at that time for 15 minutes. And indeed, you know, Yolanda Sanchez came to see me last year thinking about coming over to my campaign. She's a very prominent activist in our community who, you know, told me that basically what, you know, has happened through the years is Melissa spends like 15 minutes at each place and then moves on to the next thing. But why I bring this up is because the deception is really out of control, and people are so confused. They just don't know what to believe. But the fact of the matter is that Melissa Mark's father was involved as a director of the hospital. He was a shareholder there. And I question the SEIU bringing somebody who's actually involved with management over to their side to be this huge part of the union. It kind of like is a little scary, because wouldn't you want somebody who was not working with management to be the head of your union? And that's exactly what has happened here. And you know, it's very scary to witness this over and over again, and it's the kind of deception that keeps going on. And that's why in the debate the other night, I felt that I had to give clarification to people. They do need to know. They cannot make a choice like this again. As much as we've been strangled under Bloomberg for the last 12 years, it happened under a complicit city council staff.
Correct.
Okay?
It could not have happened without the city council. And what I couldn't understand is that there were a lot of members in the city council who, I can understand Christine Quinn's position, because she was a city council person in one of the wealthiest districts anywhere in New York City. But there were city council people, and again, it's a wholesale shakedown, so I'm not going to get into who did what when, because it's on to the next thing, on to the next thing. But one thing is certainly evident is that there were a lot of people who walked lockstep with Christine Quinn, who represented communities of color, communities where people didn't make a lot of money. I mean, the median income in New York City is $30,000. If you remove all the millionaires and all the billionaires, it means that actual people are making very little money and spending a lot of it in rent. and it just seems untenable.
And the median income in East Harlem, since Melissa does not know this, is between $12,000 and $17,000 a year.
Wow.
So where are my people supposed to go? Okay? And that's the problem. They've been displaced, and they're getting pushed out all over the place. And when you have representation like Melissa Mark Viverito, you're basically putting my people in front of a locomotive that's about to run them over. So this is a very bad thing. I don't think we can take another 4 years of Melissa Mark Viverito, because she's going to just, you know, she'll clear us all out, and we won't have anything left. We won't have places to live, and we'll have this kind of hostile legislation, smoke and mirror legislations, where it sounds beautiful on the outside, and then you open it up, it's like, oh my God, it's a Trojan horse. And that's exactly what's happened here. And I want to tell you also, when it comes to the Tenant Protection Act, how it's overburdened the court with thousands and thousands of extra cases. The judges are not happy because people like me, for example, when my landlord lost his case, he started turning my electricity off every single night for six months. And then when that wasn't enough, he hooked my electricity into the entire buildings, okay? Then I got death threats from Greenhaven Prison. Now, to me, this is harassment. But I went to court in front of Judge Kaplan 5 times, who told me.
Judge Kaplan?
Yeah, Judge Kaplan, okay. 5 times. And he finally said, Miss Goodwin, I'm going to cite you for contempt if you come back again, because you do not have a case unless somebody from HPD witnesses it. And that's the way the new law is written. And there is nothing that I can do about it. So you can't keep coming back here saying you've been harassed unless HPD witnesses it. It's not real unless HPD actually sees you being harassed. So where do people like me go? We have no recourse. We have no protection. It's frustrating for the police. You know how many times the police had to come to my building to witness it? How many times they wrote up letters of affidavit? Con Edison wrote up letters of affidavit. All of these people are truly qualified to be witnesses to this. However, because of the way the law was rewritten by Melissa Mark Viverito, we are all stuck out in the cold with hostile landlords that basically can do anything they want to you. And you know, Melissa's taken an awful lot of money from landlords. I mean, she's even taken $3,200 from one of them. So, you know, again, for her to come out and say that she's pro-tenant or that she's with, you know, with affordable housing, I mean, it's just not true. It's just not true, unless it's affordable housing for her, so she can keep her millions in the bank.
Now, in the course of doing what I do here, I have been to tenant court a couple of times, and there's if you've ever been to tenant court,
many times,
there's a couple of things that just strikes you right off. First of all, it's mostly filled with people of color, and most of the people of color are women. And that's because men can, like, especially single men, you know, men who are not tied down to anything, can live here, there, where women have children, they have families. A lot of women are elderly, so it's a lot of elderly people, a lot of women with children who are in the housing court. So it's not just a tenant court, a tenant movement in general. There's a women's issue that is really evident just by walking in the door. You see that there's nothing but women in wheelchairs, old women, 86-year-old women.
That's right.
You know.
And there's women that are in this strange catch. They're between the ages of, say, like 57 and maybe 65, where they can't get Social Security, but they've lost their jobs, especially after the crash of Wall Street. Right. Many women lost their jobs. And a very strange thing happened in Lakewood, New Jersey. There ended up being a tent town. And many people that lived there were women between the ages of 57 and 65. And that's because they couldn't make rent in New York City anymore. They couldn't find a job. And so this particular age bracket is very, very vulnerable. But, you know, all women are, well, I don't say all women, because I see all people are vulnerable. I see especially seniors that are being rolled in and being tormented by these terrible landlords over and over again. And really, the landlord has the right to do whatever he wants to you. He has the right to kill you if he wants, because the fact of the matter is, if you keep bringing somebody to court who's 86 years old, sooner or later that's going to lead to a stroke, okay? So it's these hungry wolf landlords that just can't wait to get that empty apartment, harassing people and harassing people. And really, ever since, you know, the first Governor Cuomo, we really have not had any kind of tenant protection. I mean, I will tell you something. When I became an activist, the day I became an activist was the day that I realized that when Governor Pataki came in, the laws changed so severely for tenants. I had already been in housing court under Governor Cuomo, and I was winning, winning, winning. And then the next thing you know, Governor Pataki was in, and all the judges changed. And when all the judges changed, my life was turned upside down. And I did lose my apartment. And I know the struggle and the scramble when you don't have any money to find an apartment. All I can tell you is there was somebody upstairs that does look out for me, because it was very strange that I walked around the corner and I was able to find an apartment. And I did ask the landlord very, very nervously, do you want a credit check? Because I knew they'd look at that, what happened in that last case. And she said, no, you seem like a nice girl. But, that doesn't happen very often.
No.
And there's very, very few mom-and-pop buildings left. I mean, my building wasn't a mom-and-pop building until about 2007 when the father died and the mother decided to sell. But we have these rogue landlords now. And they make it their business to torment us every step of the way, unless you're the people that are paying $3,000 a month rent. And I think another problem is that people that come in.
Today.
Yes. I mean,
$4,000 tomorrow, $3,000
right.
a
And here's what people don't understand. In a building like mine, it is a rent-stabilized building. You can't just jack the rent from $400 to $3,000. You would have had to put $1 million worth of work into the apartment. So even if the landlord has gone ahead and renovated the apartment, it could never come up to $3,000. It just couldn't. And I can't get people to understand, if you just go and you do your rent history, I think it's within the first month you can do a rent history, find out what the last tenant was paying, and you can challenge your rent. Why pay $3,000 when you don't have to pay that kind of money? But it's very hard to get young people to understand, that's an option for them, and it would really help them to save their money. Because truly, a lot of the young people are sharing these apartments, 3 and 4 at a time. They get sick of living with each other, and they leave. And then in a building like mine, they get the 18% vacancy rate first. And then they go up to the next level, and the next thing you know, we're out of the rent stabilization plan. So, it's also a matter of looking after the next person that comes in behind you. But, there are some things you can do to challenge the rents.
I would assume that there are a lot of little factors involved in people's reluctance to actually challenge things that would go to their benefit. Some of the issues of being an immigrant might, there are some people who are just intimidated by the sheer thought of going against a system that seems to be able to do what it wants, when it wants, irrespective of what you.
I've heard that a lot, and I'm going to ask people, and some guy was yelling at me the other day about, oh, you didn't have enough money in your campaign. I was like, well, listen. How do you like what you bought so far? You like the representation you bought so far? Okay, because the fact of the matter is, people like me, that we, to get $10 out of somebody in East Harlem to give to your campaign is like, taking off a toenail. It's very hard because people are living that close to the edge. My people are living that close to the edge. So it's very, very hard. But the fact of the matter is that, when people like me do get into office, good changes happen for regular people. But people need to understand that nothing has ever come to anyone who didn't fight for it.
Yeah, I've heard that, and the only thing I can say to that, well, is the last time you hired a mayor, you hired a king, and you hired the Illuminati. How did that work out for you? It seems like the only way you can run for office these days is to be literally part of the Illuminati.
I mean, let me tell you something.
And I mean that economically, not mystically.
Right, you have to be, well, I'll tell you what, we're doing it. My campaign runs on full volunteer help, no kidding, all volunteers. And I mean, one of the men that works with me is such a wonderful couple. And he said, Gwen, we don't know what we're going to do if you don't get in. We won't be able to live here anymore. This is how critical it is. And they realize it. So, an old-fashioned campaign consists of mostly volunteers. But, campaigns have been cheapened. When you came to Melissa's event the other night, everyone that was out there, a lot of people were out there were people that do drugs. And I only know that because my team knew who they were. And they were just waiting. One of my guys working with me said, yeah, Gwen, you want to get that $10 to get out there and get that crack afterwards, And here are the people holding the Melissa signs. But in my neighborhood where people are so poor, they're happy to have that $10 or $20 that's being doled out. But what they don't realize is how they are working to hurt their own people and themselves. Don't hold the sign, and don't go out and work for somebody who's a multimillionaire. Work for yourself. Work on things that are going to help you get ahead, not ingratiate these people that have come to take your apartments away and to remove you from your district.
Now, things don't happen in a vacuum, and there's a lot of things going on that contributed, exacerbated the problem of the rent structure in New York City. There's just so many things that were happening all at once. The Mayor Mike Bloomberg, not only in effect had total control of the housing market, but he also had total control of the education system and total control of the police department, which means that, and it seems to be some sort of conflict of interest to control stop and frisk and housing and the education system, and the education system is the one that has the least priority. Your thoughts on that, because I want to get into stop and frisk, and I want to get into, but just the sheer amount of control that allowed the rich to just become so disproportionately benefited, and the poor to just like be squeezed in a box with no way out.
Right.
Your thoughts on that?
Well, I have to tell you that when I heard I'm going to just say that when I heard Christine Quinn speak over and over again about Ray Kelly, she kept saying that he's going to be my police chief. Here's the problem. He's not your police chief, and you are not the queen, and Mike Bloomberg is not the mayor.
Right.
These people have confused their place in government. What you are as the mayor and the speaker and city council is you are the waiters and waitresses to the people who live in New York City. You are here to serve the people of New York City, not to serve them up. So we've gotten people that really should be living in England, and if they want to run for any office, and
yeah,
to be
15th century
right,
England.
15th century England,
yeah, right.
Because that is not what people came to America and fought and died for. We fought and died for a democracy,
right.
And so I have seen this kind of dictatorship behavior spiral up. And so the mayor really is the dictator of all of these entities. And Christine Quinn was very, very sure that when she got in, she'd be the next dictator, and she's okay with that. And that's the way. That's even the way they took the third term. I mean, how dare you? How dare you tell us? You're our representatives, and you told us that we're so stupid that we couldn't even make a decision about whether or not these people should get a fourth term. So they totally blocked the residents of New York City out of being able to vote in a referendum to say whether or not we wanted the mayor to have an extra term, because these
right,
elitists of the city council took that right away from us. And you see, to me, I got a big problem with that. And to me, I don't even know, honestly, there's a few city council people that I am okay with. But all of them are running for higher offices now, and I just want to ask people in New York, do you really feel that you got served while these people were in office?
You got served,
I mean, let's talk about Bill de Blasio for a minute.
Right.
When we were fighting the 125th Street rezoning, I personally got him alone and said, do you feel good about the rezoning of 125th Street? I mean, how could you do that? And he said, like they all say, with a boilerplate answer, I feel very good about my decision there, and I am proud of my decision. Really? Well, I'll tell you
That was all he said?
That's what he said, and he walked away in a very arrogant,
cool.
in a very arrogant way. Now, Tony Avella,
right,
who doesn't even live in Manhattan, knew what this meant. And Tony Avella said, I will not go along with this because I completely understand what's going to happen to the people. And he did not vote for it. And neither did Charles Barron. And in my book, that makes these two guys heroes. You know why? Because they stood up against the tide that was going against them. And I will tell you one thing, that had New York got Tony Avella as the mayor last time, you would have been a hell of a lot better off than 4 more years of this guy. So, I really think it should be, we should look for those qualities in our leaders. We should look for the kind of qualities that Charles Barron and Tony Avella bring to the table. These people are bringing leadership to the table with truth and integrity. And that's how I feel about, just the two. The other people that are running, I'm sorry, I
will say this, specifically about Speaker Quinn. But I could, say this about a few people. I have heard answers to questions, personally heard answers to questions that were so stupid that I could not believe that they allowed them to go by unchallenged.
Right.
I heard someone from El Dario ask Christine Quinn, what is affordable housing? And I'll never forget the answer she gave, and I could not believe they just allowed that to go by. She said, and I quote, affordable housing is different in different places. It means different things in different places. I have no idea what that means. If you're saying that housing, and we have a couple of phone calls, if you're saying that housing, affordable housing is different in Beverly Hills than it is,
well, yeah, that's,
you know.
Yeah, that's probably true.
But you are running, you want to be the mayor of the 5 boroughs of New York. Are you saying that you want to create communities where there's only the rich and only the poor? I have no idea what that means. And no one ever asked her, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, we're going to take some calls because I know that we have some callers who want to ask you some questions.
Great.
So if you can get it on, we'll take the calls. Well, while we're waiting for them to play with the technology, because we play with technology around here.
I'm a WBAI girl.
What does affordable housing mean? To give me an answer like it means different things to different, you know, I mean, I can't pay that. I can't write a check for different things.
Look, I think that affordable housing, especially in today's critical time, is housing that is probably under the number of 1,000.
Right, but isn't some math involved? Don't you know the median income of New Yorkers? Don't you know how much New Yorkers
the
make?
formula, okay, I'm sorry, let me clarify that. The formula used to be, and it was always like this for many years, that whatever you're going to pay in rent should be 1/3 of what your salary is for the year, okay? And that was it until pretty much Bloomberg came in. And that really probably works for most people. That's at least doable. I think now people are paying 1/2 or even more than 1/2 of what they make in their salary. I mean, thank God my husband married me. Not only, this guy is very lucky on so many levels, but here's the thing. His rent was about to go up to $1,300. Now, my husband is a postal worker, and that would have meant that he was paying a little over half of what he brought in every month on his rent. And that was not a good thing.
And a postal worker, that's a good gig. A lot of people would be very, very proud to be able to go to work and be a postal worker. And now you're telling me that a postal worker's salary, and it used to be like, you know, if you said I was working for the post office, it was like, okay.
It used to be that till Ronald Reagan came in, and Ronald Reagan totally raped the postal workers of the United States of America. And then they got hit on the head with George Bush. And so many people do not understand what's going on. Let me tell you something. The post office is not going bankrupt, okay? They are the only working entity in the world that has to put away pensions 75 years ahead of time. So what normally would happen with the post office is that they would make a profit every year of $5 billion. But now
you can just
the
put
profit,
I'm sorry. If they're there, put them through. I'll hear them. Tell them to speak up, and she'll take the question.
But now the profit that they used to make goes into the pensions. And that's why each time, every year, they come
Which is unique only to the post office.
No other for-profit or not-profit company.
It's like playing both ends against the middle.
Well, no company in the entire world is required to do this, not one. So purposely, it looks like Wall Street knows there's a big ball of money with the post office. And I believe that Wall Street is very interested in seeing the post office fail because they want to get their hands on that money and start to manage it in a different way. And when you let Wall Street, when you gamble with them,
all right, be right with you.
You usually end up with big problems, okay? So, you know, I advise companies, it's better to have your savings put away, snug, and not gamble with your savings, okay? Too many people in government jobs have done that, and they've gone totally bust, okay? So the best thing to do is just take your pensions, take your savings, put it together, and just leave it in a safe place. Don't gamble with
there are a lot of two-income households where in a normal world, they would be like really middle class, but they're like really struggling. Caller, if you're there, chime right in. Good afternoon, caller. My guest is Gwen Goodwin. She's running for City Council in East Harlem. That is District 8 in Manhattan.
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, I hear you. We hear you.
This call is for Miss Goodwin. Hi.
Hi.
My name is Harry. I live in the East Village.
Okay.
And I just want to tell you, Miss Goodwin, I think it's so refreshing to hear somebody, you know, wanting to be elected, to be speaking so frankly, and to be speaking the truth. And I get the impression that you're not going to be a bully. I think that what you're saying here is true, and I believe every word you say. I'm sorry I don't live in your district, but I'd like to know how I could donate to your campaign.
Well, you can
I live in the East Village.
Harry, we need your money. So, you know, we're coming to the roundup, and it's very easy to donate. You can go on to GwenGoodwin.com.
Yeah, I don't have.
Okay, well, if you want to send us a check, you can do that by sending.
You got a phone number?
Yeah, I'll just give you the phone number.
Yeah.
Great.
You can call me at my office at 212 534
534
09
09
63.
63.
Say that back.
Okay.
Say that back.
212 534 0963.
Excellent. And it's Gwen Goodwin.
Goodwin, yes.
All right. We're going to take another call. I want to thank you for calling in. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you, Harry.
If you have another caller, put the caller through.
Hello.
Hi, caller. Good afternoon.
Hi, my name is Louise, and I live in East Harlem, and I'm one of the people that live in New York City houses that's paid in the thousands. And I'm a retired school teacher, and I'm thinking about relocating.
Well, I don't think you should, Louise.
Huh?
I don't think you should, not yet, because.
Why? Okay, but anyway, I wish I would know more about you.
Well,
and I don't know about you until now, and I would like to have my daughters and my kids vote for you.
great.
But I think you need to put out more information.
Well, Louise, we have a lot of information that we have put out. We've gone all through the New York City housing projects, and we're still going through them now, posting flyers. But the easiest and the best way to know who I am is to go to GwenGoodwin.com, okay? Now, if you go to GwenGoodwin.com, you're going to see the last 28 years of my work in East Harlem, and you're going to recognize those things. For example, PS 109 stands today because in 1999, I stopped the illegal demolition of PS 109. I worked for 12 years with Reverend Eddie to turn it back into a public school while Melissa Mark Viverito blocked it. Now Melissa Mark Viverito is turning PS 109 into yuppie housing for so-called artists who live on the other side of 96th Street. While we lost 1,200 seats that could have been added to the school system in East Harlem, these yuppies are getting our school. So I really encourage you, please, not just to go and look at the website, but to talk to your friends. Because you know what, Louise? This is about you, okay? And this time, if we get another 4 years, I don't think you're going to make it in East Harlem. I think you're going to be out the door.
So you think that, so like I said, I was planning on relocating, but, you know.
Hey, Louise, why don't you stay? Because we're organizing rent strikes in NYCHA, and I think it's a very, very exciting time to be a NYCHA resident, because I know the power of the residents of NYCHA. And I tell you something, they are very powerful, and I think that people in New York are about to find out just how powerful. So why don't you stay on board, talk to your neighbors, and make them know who I am, because if not, you're going to get another dose of Melissa, and that would be very sad.
Okay, definitely, and I'll be looking. I'll go on the website.
GwenGoodwin.com.
Just type in the word. Even if you type in the words Gwen Goodwin,
it'll come up.
It'll all pop up. And I really don't think that it is in the best interest of the people of the nation to have retired school teachers moving from here to there. It does not send a very good signal to any of us if so important a position means absolutely nothing, then we're all going to have to rethink the way we do business.
But you know what? I'm glad you said that, because by me choosing to stay in NYCHA, I've helped so many people. You know, by just talking to them, directing the parents about the school system and so forth. So, you know.
I would always encourage people to stay, Louise. Let me tell you something. I've been through years and years of housing court. I stayed, I fought, and I won. It's important that we do not leave when there's problems. Don't run away from problems. Take them head on. We're going to take our problems.
All right. Well, thank you for taking my call.
Hey,
good luck.
Do we have another call? Yeah, we're spending
hello?
Oh, hi. Good afternoon, caller.
Yeah, Brother Nate, another award-winning show.
Thank you, brother.
Goodwin. You're spitting fire. I suggest you get a soapbox and get out there on the east side and let it be known. You know, I have to ask you a question, Ms. Goodwin. I watch television a lot, and on Bravo they have this show called $1 Million Real Estate New York, and it's about these real estate agents that run around in Manhattan selling all these $1 million buildings. And to my surprise, I for one was from the Lower East Side, and I've seen what so-called gentrification what it ended up turning into. And I basically felt like a stranger in my own neighborhood, and now I'm in the west side of Harlem and whatnot. And I'm starting to see it happen here and whatnot. And, you know, a lot of people, they stand around and think the extra police and this, that, and the third is to make the neighborhood better for them. But it's not. It's basically the cavalry clearing out the Indians for the settlers type
That's
situation.
right. That's right.
And I was just curious, like, I seen Mr. Avila
Viverito.
on New York 1, but it was more like an honorable mention because I think there's, like, besides Thompson and Blasio or whatever his name is, and Quinn, it's like I didn't even know Avila was running.
No, let me give you a point of clarification. He is not running this time. He ran in 2009. Okay, so he's not running here in Manhattan for anything, but he used to be in the city council in 2008. Then he ran for the mayor in 2009. Now he is running for the president in Queens, borough president of Queens. And you know, although that's not our district, I still would encourage people out there to vote for him because I think that, like me in East Harlem, when I get in, I'm going to be affecting other neighborhoods. I mean, even though I live in East Harlem,
you act in tandem
so
for a lot
the
of
thing
things.
is that we have projects all over New York City, not just East Harlem.
Let me ask you one more thing, Ms. Goodwin, right? Whenever I was in Lillian Wall projects on the Lower East Side years ago, they had brought in the storm windows and the new cabinets. There was this rumor going around that white people were going to take over, right? But now there's like this new thing where they're talking about Trump is buying up project property or something. Like NYCHA is no longer a city entity. Is that true?
Okay. Let me just give you a few points of clarification because this is really the crux of my entire campaign. There's something called infill, okay? And NYCHA has basically said that they have a deficit that's so enormous that they can't pay it. And what they're doing is they want to allow private developers to build luxury housing on the land of the New York City Housing Project. Melissa Mark Viverito has already begun that in Washington houses under her jurisdiction. Now, I have taken the position that I am 100% opposed to this because I know for a fact that what's going to happen is the people, the residents of NYCHA, will be pushed out, okay? So you want to make sure that when you have your meetings that you are saying 100% no to infill. And it is a plan. Now, I want to tell you something also. NYCHA complains of having, I believe, a $60 million deficit. In the land in New York City, a $60 million deficit is a teardrop. It's a teardrop. It's nothing, okay? And what people don't know is that since 1995, NYCHA has been paying a non-existent police force $75 million a year to protect the tenants of NYCHA, and it doesn't even exist.
NYCHA is a heartbreak because it's Margarita Lopez, and we used to love Margarita.
Well, I see Miss Lopez as being the leader of the sellouts, okay?
Yeah, so, that's what a lot of people say.
This is what her job is. Her job is to round you up and to say, look, you know, you're like me, you're Puerto Rican, and I'm telling you what to do. I'm going to tell you, NYCHA is not going to go broke, and what we want to do is we want to reroute the $75 million they've been paying for a non-existent police force to that deficit. My plan is to take the $75 million, pay the deficit, but I want to also go back and ask for all the money retroactively back from 1995, creating at least $750 million as a cushion for any kind of repairs or any other deficits to come up at the NYCHA housing project. So this is a very easy, solvable problem. But when NYCHA comes to you, just like they do with the post office, how they tell you the post office is going broke, the post office is not going broke. It's a man-made, manufactured problem, and that's the same thing at NYCHA today. We have a manufactured problem, and over again, we see NYCHA doing things, it looks to me very much like intentionally to hurt the tenants, to encourage them to leave. For example, at Lexington House Projects, they have not had gas since the 15th of August, okay? And they say that they're not going to have it at least for another month. So right now what we're doing is we're organizing a rent strike with the tenants of Lexington House Projects because there's only one thing I think that NYCHA understands, and that's money, okay? And when you withhold your money, maybe, just maybe, we're going to get these repairs made. But I find it extremely hard to believe that you would ever not be able to make these repairs. That's one. And two, it just looks like you're making it as hard and as bumpy as possible for people to survive that live in NYCHA. And you want, and this is a way to get rid of them without, you know, actually kicking them out. You make it so uncomfortable to live there. You allow the Crips and the Bloods to come in and take over. You don't pick up the trash. I mean, come on. This would not be allowed to happen in a rent-stabilized building. I guarantee you that even if my gas was off for 3 days, that I could go to HPD and it would be turned on within a week, okay? Not even within a week. So when NYCHA comes in, fully loaded with hot plates. By the way, this is what happened at Lexington House Projects. They came in with 1,000 hot plates ready to go. On the same day they made the announcement they were turning off the gas. I mean, are you telling me they did not know a week before time they were going to turn off the gas to allow the residents to prepare? And are you really telling me that there's no way in this city of New York that we could fix this problem in less than 2 months? I mean, give me a break. These things are happening intentionally, and it's a very Bloomberg-esque way of doing things. These are the millionaires that are pressuring us because the land is so valuable. They want that land so bad that they're going to do anything to make it as hard as possible for regular, middle-class, low-income people to live where they're living.
We got like less than a minute left.
I suggest you rebroadcast the show, brother. Have a good one.
I might rebroadcast this show next week on primary night.
But we should do it before that. Need a little truth serum.
This is my time slot. Anything else is up to Eminem. But it seems to be, and I got a minute left, so I got to say this really quick. There seems to be a click within a click within a click.
Yes.
And even though incumbency has always had its advantages, it seems to be more than incumbency. You have to be involved in a good old boy network just to get your message across.
Right.
And it's a sin and a shame that more people like you have not been able to get their message across, because I really think it would change the dynamic of the entire city and maybe the entire country.
The thing is, we can't get media.
10 seconds.
No, I can't get media anymore. There's so much. But anyway, I'd ask people, please go to GwenGoodwin.com. Please check out and talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, and come out and vote on the 10th. It is so crucial, especially for people that live in NYCHA.
Gotta end
serve
it
and
there.
protect.
Gotta end it there. Type in Gwen Goodwin. We'll see you next week. Peace, and thank you for tuning in. We're out.